So Radhika, I'll just quickly start. Yeah. So thank you everyone for joining for this another round of master class. So this is our seventh master class, and the whole idea we have conceptualized this master class was just to make sure that we pick up one investment topic, and like a student we try to get a teacher and who can talk on that concept and try to solve our queries and give us perspective. That was the whole thought process with which we started this masterclass, and I'm glad that this is continuing in this pandemic period also. So today we have a very interesting topic and very interesting panelist list. Uh, the topic is global investing, and just to give you a quick perspective that global investing in last 3-4 years has actually taken off in a very big way in India, and investors have started to realize that geographical diversification can add a lot of value to the portfolio. It can hedge, it can give you benefit of currency depreciation, which our currency is doing with the dollar for more than 20 years now. And this is again a very interesting topic. And why should only be invested in Indian equity? Why can't we look at other avenues? So with that thought process, we thought let's get someone who understands this topic and who has been doing a lot of work on that part. So we have with us uh, Radhika Gupta. She doesn't need any introduction. I think she is very famous. I just told her that my yoga teacher just told me 5 minutes before, tell my hi to her. So I know her fan following is big one. So, but still, let me give you a quick background about Radhika. She is an investment professional with a range of diverse experience across asset management globally and in India, which includes startup and global giants. She started her career with McKinsey, later switched to Wall Street, joining AQR Capital. She then moved to India in 2009 to start her own venture, Forefront Capital. So Radhika, you have been an entrepreneur yourself. Great. She then the first registered hedge fund in India, and she led the. After that, it was acquired by Edelweiss Financial Services in 2014, and she is taking care of the acquisition of JP Morgan mutual fund business and Ambit Capital AIF business to uh, with Edelweiss. Since then, her efforts to concentrate in helping build brands. Edelweiss AMC, very fast growing and differentiated and innovative asset manager. Their recent launch of Bharat Bond ETF in partnership with Government of India, India's first corporate bond. And let me tell you, Radhika, that has been a great product, and that's doing a great service to investors. That's a low cost, cheap product available in the debt space. Very innovative product. Talking about the softer side of Radhika, she's a global citizen having grown up in 4 continents, a keen storyteller, uh, bridge player, and Twitter microblogger. Radhika has graduated from Management and Technology program for University of Peninsula with joint degree in economics from Wharton School, in addition to computer science engineering from Moore School, and she is the founding president of Penn Alumni Club of Mumbai. So thank you, Radhika, for being with us. We also have with us Niranjan Avasthi. He's the head product and marketing at Edelweiss Mutual Fund. He has 13 years of experience and is a cost management accountant from ICI and PGIM rank holder from Pune University. He has joined Edelweiss in 2017. He is responsible for overall product and marketing strategy of AMC. Before joining Edelweiss, he was head of product communication at ICICI Prudential for 6 years plus. Thank you, Niranjan, for being with us. And Radhika, what I will do, I just want a quick uh, stuff from you. I think many of us want to know a little bit about your journey and some inspiring thing to kickstart this session. Why don't you start with something not related to topic, but something about yourself? Maybe a quick inspirational quote which makes you moving, which keeps you moving.
Oh God, this is really hard. Hi, Arun. Thanks for having me in Ranjan, and good evening to everyone who and really appreciate everyone listening in on a Friday. When you see this number of people listening in on a Friday, when you could be doing something else, it's always very flattering. And thanks for the nice introduction. I can't think of something at the top of my head, but I will just tell you what I was telling Tarun before we started, that me and Niranjan just got off a session with Mr. Dr. A. Velumani of Thyrocare, and I've interviewed so many people in my life, but my God, the energy the guy has at 60. And I mean, everything the guy said was a punchline. But one of the really inspiring things I heard from him is that I was asking him how to judge companies, because that's our profession. And he said, you should judge a company by the amount of young people working in a company. Because he said, if you build a company where the average age is 25, that company will definitely last 30, 40 years, and it will capture the DNA of the youth. Um, and the reason I found this inspiring is that, and he talked about the fact that if you are a young Indian, the worst thing you can do is waste your time and money by sitting idle. And I think that's true for money management also, and it's true for life. He said कि चाहे मराठी में कहो, तमिल में कहो, English में कहो, कुछ करो life में. And I found that very, very uplifting. And the last uplifting story I'll tell you, although there's tons to take away from him, is that when I asked him at the end what next for Dr. A. Velumani, he said, I want to add another zero, because he's added a zero every 6 years. And but it's not a zero in market cap. So he's gone from 500 rupees to 5,000 crores of market cap, and it's not 50,000 crores of market cap. He wants to add a zero to the number of people that he employs. And he said that if you employ more people and if you chase job creation, तो market cap तो खुद पीछे पीछे आएगा. जैसे वो थ्री इडियट्स का डायलॉग है ना, आप कामयाबी के पीछे मत भागो, आप काबिलियत के पीछे भागो. So rather than my original lines today, I thought I would share some wisdom I just acquired in the last 1.5 hour, that everyone should do something, and everyone should stop complaining about what India is and self-flagellate ourselves, and just see what we can do to make this a better place to live in. So I'm just in a very inspired state of mind.
But Radhika, just to get, I know your career also from last 15 years have been in a very different, you started with a hedge fund, get into starting a hedge fund in India, then moving to a mutual fund, very different, right? So again, was it a very designed or planned thing, or it was intuitive, or you kept taking your decisions very as it came?
I don't think, and Dr. Velomani also said this, right? I don't think careers are planned. I don't think life is planned. I think it is a series of opportunities that come your way. And the thing is that whatever opportunity you get at that point, you make the best of it. I mean, it's in my bio, you alluded to the fact that I did the merger of JP Morgan and Edelweiss. Now, I knew nothing about the mutual fund business then. And a lot of people were like, yeah, you're running a successful business, तो इस merger के चक्कर में क्यों पड़ रही है? तुझे क्या मिलने वाला है? A lot of people were asking me at the end of this, have you been promised a promotion? Have you been promised something? तुझे कुछ मिलेगा? And I said, I don't know मुझे क्या मिलने वाला है, but I know that I have this opportunity right now. And that opportunity is, one of my bosses told me when he was giving me this, he's like, this opportunity is going to change your life. And I was like, ऐसे ही कह रहे हैं. But my point was that you make the most of every opportunity that is given to you at that point in time. And I genuinely believe that Alchemist, although I like the Shah Rukh Khan version better, I genuinely believe the Shah Rukh Khan dialogue that अगर तुम सच्चे दिल से कुछ चाहो, then the universe actually conspires to make you succeed. I genuinely believe that. So I think my career and most successful people's career is a function of grabbing whatever has come my way and then someone above conspiring to make it work for me.
Wow. Thank you, Radhika. So on that note, Radhika, let's come to this subject of global investing, and I will leave the floor all open to you, So should I give you make you the host, Radhika?
Yes.
You'll take it?
And then we will start projecting our presentation. So global investing, I think Niranjan and I are going to share the honors in terms of speaking today, so that you get to hear from two different voices. But this is a really interesting theme, and I want to set some context for it. At least I personally started my career in the US, and when I started earning, I was 22, 23, and most of us who were sort of living abroad, we never had 100% of our money in the US market. I mean, no matter how great we thought about the US, there was not so much home country bias. So, probably 50% of my portfolio, because I was living in the US, was US, or baki 50% India, was emerging markets, various different markets in Europe and ye sab tha. Then I moved back to India in 2009, and I didn't really hear too much about international funds or international investing, and it was like a big blank. But there were a few international funds, and I didn't know Edelweiss then, so it was not Edelweiss. I actually picked up a Birla fund and invested in it. And I have been investing abroad at least since 2010. And then, interestingly enough, we happened to acquire the JP Morgan business in 2016 and 17. And I think that Ranjan came on board then too. We had this small collection of international funds, 200 crores. And I had one client of ours who was possibly the most evolved client I've ever met. And he was sort of the only serious investor in these funds. And he kept telling me, Radhika, these funds don't grow. He's like, तुम्हारे fund अच्छे हैं, तुम काम अच्छा कर रही हो. Why is no one investing abroad? और मैं कहती थी, सर एक दिन आएगा when people will invest abroad. And suddenly in the last year, I think the amount of conversation that is happening around international investing, the amount of things that Niranjan and I have done in terms of international investing is very, very heartening. And I always think of this client and the fact that he was years ahead of the curve. So that is international investing for you. And I'm just projecting my screen, which hopefully you can see. So you can see my screen. Give me 1 second. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to give you a quick run through of three things. One is why you should invest abroad. What is really the case for investing abroad? And at some point I will chime in on what are the reasons not to invest abroad. And then I think I'm going to ask Niranjan to talk to you about two specific investment opportunities. One is focused on the US markets and what is going on there. And one is focused on emerging markets. So we'll go from there. So why invest abroad? I think there are three cases to invest abroad. One is that you get access to companies that are not present in India. Now, as great a market as India is, and I am a total patriot, there are just some themes that are not represented in our indices. तो अगर आप हमारे यहाँ IT देखो तो IT इंडिया में IT services होता है, Infosys, Wipro. None of the big technology themes, whether it is cloud or even digital payments, I mean, even a Paytm is not listed in India. None of these themes, streaming, etc., Netflix, etc., are not listed in India. All these themes are absent from India. If you talk about healthcare, then real biotechnology, India is a generic healthcare market. All the original vaccine research is happening overseas. So you get access to companies that are not present in India. The second thing, and we'll show you some very interesting data on this, is that there is a benefit because different countries do well at different times. I mean, हर country का अलग-अलग time आता है. कभी India का time आता है, कभी China का time आता है, कभी किसी और का time आता है. And basic finance tells you कि जब आप अलग-अलग चीजें लेते हैं, when you take different asset classes जो अलग-अलग time पे perform करती हैं, then you build a more robust portfolio. And the third reason to invest in overseas markets is the rupee, because you are investing in foreign currency and you get a hedge against the rupee. So let's just deep dive into each of these themes. Access, I think, is the most important reason to invest abroad because you are really accessing companies that are not available in India. Many of us, especially in COVID, are consumers of technology. The fact is we are all talking to each other over Zoom, which is a listed company. In fact, at some point, Zoom's market cap crossed Goldman Sachs. We use many of these brands globally, whether it is your phone that you are hooked to, whether it is Amazon, whether it is Coke, all of these brands are brands that we use, but they are not listed in India and they are world-class brands. Many of the fintechs, for instance, are not listed in India, and investing overseas gives you access to them. Now, one of the approaches to investing overseas is to buy foreign stocks directly. In my opinion, that is a little painful. I mean, it's hard enough to track stocks with what's going on in India, but to track foreign stocks and build a basket of 30, 40 of them and do deep research is pretty tricky. Plus you have the rupee conversion and all of that. a mutual fund investing abroad essentially makes that very easy for you. It's just like investing in a domestic fund, except the taxation profile is different. So it's very convenient. International funds basically give you direct access and exposure to these brands through the mutual fund platform. The second reason, and I want you to take a moment to look at this chart carefully. So this is a chart that shows the performance of different countries at different points in time. So in 2019, Taiwan and China were the best performing markets. India was actually the worst performing market. In 2012, India was the best performing market. Japan was the worst. One thing, if you just stare at this map or this quilt long enough, you'll realize that the top performer is constantly changing. In fact, the green of India keeps moving from very top to very bottom. The point is not that one market is better or worse. The point is that different markets perform at different times. In fact, if you look at the last decade on the right, in terms of total return, the US is the best performing market, and the next column is risk with the lowest kind of risk. So this, in my mind, is the biggest case to invest abroad. The case is not returns. The case is that you're buying two things that move differently. In fact, since 1990, if you look at it, the correlation, or how much these markets, and correlation in finance is a measure of how two markets move in sync, how related they are, is very little. The correlation between the India and US market is only 0.07. In fact, in some of our funds, we do this analysis that if you take a 100% Nifty portfolio and then you take a 100% US portfolio, obviously both of them are equities. So risk to दोनों में है, चाहे आप US stocks करो या India stocks करो. लेकिन if you take an India portfolio, or 80% आप India रखो and 20% you decide to add US, what you will not only do is improve the return of the portfolio, but आप risk भी उस portfolio की कम करोगे. So for me, again and again, the reason to invest in international funds is diversification and access. The third thing I would say is that the currency has depreciated, and the currency does depreciate. India is likely to be a depreciating currency. So the currency is depreciated about 4% a year. तो ये आपको incremental benefit अपने returns में मिल जाएगा. So those are, I think, the three cases to invest abroad. Now, recently, investing abroad has also become very popular. And I think just as there are reasons that you should invest abroad, and I talked to a lot of them, there are reasons you should not invest abroad, or there are bad reasons to look at international investing. So I always believe in investing, you should invest in anything for the right reasons. The right reasons are diversification, access, currency depreciation. By the way, after 3 years, these funds are treated as debt funds for taxation. They have indexation. The wrong reason to invest is because these funds have done well recently. The returns of all these funds look fantastic in the last year. That is a bad reason to invest in them. The second bad reason to invest in them is because you don't think they're risky. A market like NASDAQ, an index like NASDAQ has been up every year for the last 10 years. That does not mean it is risky. In fact, investing in a sectoral technology index like NASDAQ is probably riskier than investing in Indian equities. तो चाहे आप PMS करो, चाहे आप passive करो, चाहे आप Indian equities करो, चाहे आप US equities करो. Equity is equity, and equity carries risk. So the same behavior that you need while investing locally, which is have patience, hold for the long term, all that stuff that you keep hearing from us, that same stuff also applies to international equities. Do know sometimes that when you invest in markets like a US or a China, you may not have as much comfort or information. India में क्या है, हम लोग इंडिया में रहते हैं, politics के बारे में सुनते हैं, currency के बारे में सुनते हैं, 10 neighbor हमें opinion देते हैं, all this stuff happens. With these markets, you have less information. It's important to pick major themes, not something crazy niche, and look for the long term. And these markets have geopolitical events. So I always think it's very important that we highlight risks in these markets just as we highlight returns.
Radhika, for your information, there are a lot of NRIs also joining us in this session. A lot of NRIs from the Gulf. Okay, so maybe in case you want to touch upon anything on that.
Sure, no, that helps. And I think both NRIs and domestic investors can look at these funds. And just the mechanism of investing in these funds, and we can take it in the Q&A after. Investing in an international fund, and today in India, there are international funds covering everything. Like we have now 6 funds plus one Indo Global fund, and we cover about 80% of the world. So you can get US funds, you can get Europe funds, you can get emerging market funds, you can get China funds, you can get Asia ex China funds. I mean, literally everything is available to you. You can get thematic funds. So you can get funds that look at technology, or funds that look at value, or funds that look at healthcare and have global exposure. So really you have the universe in front of you, and you start with the same. If you are an NRI from the Gulf investing in India in a domestic mutual fund, investing in a feeder fund is just the same. You start with the same kind of minimums. The only difference is, instead of 1 year long-term capital gains taxation, it's 3 years, but it's got the benefit of indexation. So if you've invested in a debt fund, it's very similar to that. So that's just something to keep in mind. But I just reiterate that investing in a overseas via mutual funds is probably the simplest way um, to do it. And again, you have all types of funds. As I said, you have all geographies. You have funds that are active funds where fund managers are taking a call. You have funds that are passive funds. You have funds where the Indian AMC is directly managing the money. And you have a lot of funds where the AMC is partnering, because we don't have expertise, with a foreign asset manager. Like we partner with JP Morgan to manage our funds. So literally the whole basket is open to you. And of course, I think Tarun and his team, or your advisor, will be able to guide you on what works. So with that, we will go to two themes that I think are relevant today. The first theme is one around opportunities in technology. I'll just give a quick context and then hand it over to Niranjan. I think technology is a very, very relevant theme, and it's become super relevant in the COVID era. There are lots of businesses every day that are being disrupted by technology. And so why not look at technology as a theme in your portfolio? And this is very relevant because, as I said, in India, technology is Infi Wipro, which is IT services. So the real disruptive innovation is not happening here. So Niranjan, why don't you give everyone an overview of technology and the opportunities in technology? And I'll move the slides. You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. So as Radhika alluded to, technology today is changing the entire world, and like earlier times, technology is not only related to IT services or software services, or for that matter, hardware services. Each and every industry today is being driven by the use of technology. Technology is actually empowering these industries. So today, if we talk about the mega trends within the technology, because if you go back to maybe 50 or 100 years of history across the world, there were technologies which were introduced which drove the entire world and various economies. So if you go back to maybe pre-World War era, mobility and railroads was the technology which actually changed the entire world. Post that, we look if you look at the industrialization era, where machines were used, power was invented, it was made available. That was the technology which was driving the world. And since over the last 2 decades, if you see, technology, when it comes to maybe internet or coming up with robotics and all, is been driving the world. So like that, as we stand today, what are the mega trends which we see can disrupt or change the world over the next 5 to 10 years? And the ones which you see on the slide, I think so a lot of people would be aware of it. And as Tarun mentioned, there are many NRIs over here, and I'm sure these people would be actually working on these technologies. So today, if you see cloud computing and digital transformation, and I don't need to mention this, the way we are interacting today, in a normal pre-COVID world, we would had a physical meeting, me traveling or Radhika traveling to some place, but today we are doing it all virtually. Similarly, a lot of businesses are adopting to digital and cloud computing so that they can maximize their reach to their customers. Electronic payments, we all know, as far as India is concerned, post demonetization, we are all used to do Paytm, or Paytm Karo is becoming a you can say a slang. of doing payments. So that is another area which is changing the world. Artificial intelligence, machine learning is used in every field today. I, as Radhika mentioned, I also look at marketing, and in marketing, let me tell you, the way information is being used to target audience, it's become a very seamless process. Artificial intelligence is being used in diagnosis or healthcare, to in a preventive care segment as well. OTT, we all know, we all do binge watching. Netflix and Amazon today are disrupting the cinemas, or the old world dish TV networks. And all these technologies, be it 5G or autonomous car, are today in a very early stage where they have just started being adopted by many users. And over the next few years or decades, uh, you will see this being a very very common. So let me give you an example of smartphone. So smartphone, if you see 10 years back, you would have found smartphones being used only by maybe some of the richest in India, or maybe one of or few of your friends. But today, smartphone is becoming a necessity. It is not a discretionary spend. Similarly, most of these technologies, and if we can just move to next slide. Thanks, Radhika. So similarly, all technologies, as I mentioned, smartphone, all these technologies at some point in time were introduced, innovated, and they went through a phase where, we call it in a technical language an S curve, but maybe I'll try to simplify it. So any technology goes through basically 4 to 5 phases. When it is invented, it is a pre-adoption and early adoption phase, where people try to test that technology, use it, and then through a word of mouth, through reviews and all, it goes into rapid adoption, and then it finally matures. So today, PC, laptops, smartphones, or tablets are basically in a mature phase. 10 or 15 years back, they were in maybe early adoption or rapid adoption phase. As we speak today, these technologies which we just discussed, like 5G, electronic payments, OTT, these are all emerging technologies which are maybe in an early or rapid adoption phase. And for wealth creation, this becomes a very, very important aspect, because any company you want to invest, you catch it young and ride the entire journey of their product life cycle or the company life cycle. And that is where immense amount of wealth is created. Imagine Apple, if you would had invested maybe 20 years back, the amount of wealth it would have created from becoming a 1 billion company to a 2.5 trillion company is immense. So today, and fortunately, as Radhika mentioned, the easier way to catch these kind of technologies maybe through investing offshore, and particularly US market, because when we talk about US market is basically a hub for all these technology disruptions. And you talk about any market leader, be it Amazon, be it Google or Apple, Microsoft for that matter, for many many decades now, all have been from the US market. So one of the important way, or one of the easiest way to capture these kind of trend could be by investing in a US fund, or a fund which is maybe focused on technology in the US market. And this, I think so, would be a fair amount, would give a fair amount of diversification on for many investors who are looking to invest. And yeah, so as I was saying, technology is not only software, because in India, we have grown up knowing technology companies, which are only maybe Wipro, Infosys, or some other TCS kind of companies. But these are mostly software companies. But today, technology is a very very wide field. Imagine today how a retail business is changing. We are getting used to online orders. Retail is changing from physical to brick and mortar to maybe online. Industries are using technology, logistics, machine learning to increase their efficiency. In manufacturing, if you see whether it is automobile company or any other manufacturing company, robots are replacing humans. uh, as I mentioned, earlier, advertising, everything is digital. So maybe 15 years back, for a company, almost 90% of their budgets of advertising used to be TV or maybe a print or outdoor. Today, even in our organization, when we create plans or many other organizations create advertising or marketing plan, almost 50% of their budgets are digital advertising, which is through the names like Google, Facebook, Instagram. So every industry, in every sector, there is disruption happening through the use of technology. If we see some other sectors as well, like healthcare, I was mentioning, uh, you know uh, many, you can say, robust technologies like scan machines and all, uh, glucometer for that matter, are being used heavily, and changing the way old pathology or laboratory testing has been done. Automotive, we all know Tesla, what it is doing, or electric vehicle, and as it is in financial services. So everywhere, every sector, you're looking, you are seeing disruption in technology, through technology. And I think so, or we strongly believe that this theme could be a good way to catch the next wave of wealth creation. And fortunately, it's been very easy for a lot of us to invest. There are funds available which are focused to US tech or US market, through which you can have exposure to these kind of funds. uh,
Thanks.
yeah.
Thanks, Niranjan. That's very helpful. I just wanted to quickly introduce to you next, and then I'll hand it over to you. So I think the first theme that Niranjan talked about is a very developed markets theme, that is US. Of course, developed markets in the US have sort of been the story of the last decade. But one of the emerging stories, especially in a post-vaccine world and in a world where interest rates in developed markets are, near zero or at zero, is the whole emerging markets play. Emerging markets haven't done brilliantly in the last decade, uh, but they are a serious source of growth. So markets like China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Brazil, Russia, and India, of course. So the next opportunity, Niranjan, if I can hand it over to you, is if you can brief the audience. You talked about a US and a technology theme, the other side, which is an emerging market.
Yeah. So emerging markets. So I mean, we all know that there are two kinds of demarcation when it comes to economies. One is the developed economy, and another one is the developing economy. And if you look at, barring maybe US or European nation, there are very promising stories just like India, which are part of the emerging markets. And you know due to some reason or unfortunate reason, over the last 10 years, the decade have been mostly, the performance or the outperformers were mostly from the developed market. uh, but now I think so, the stars are aligning as far as the emerging markets are concerned. A lot of emerging markets today, if you see, they are dependent on what is happening to the US dollar or what is happening in the global economy. Uh, I was just discussing with Tarun before the session, and today almost 18 trillion worth debt is earning negative returns. And imagine, in India, we have just seen interest rate going down, which are maybe around 3.5%, which we haven't seen over the last maybe 25, 30 years. And what happens is when people, you know, s- get used to, higher rate of returns or higher returns, and suddenly the interest rates are collapsing or are negative, people generally, shift or run towards risky assets, or for that matter equities, to earn better returns. And usually most of this, 18 trillion dollar debt which is earning negative is in the developed market. And in past also we have seen that this kind of scenario is basically very helpful for emerging markets to do well, because there is a lot of capital flows into the emerging markets, which actually helps the economy to grow faster. uh, let's take example of India. Today India has one of the most favorable demographics. But what lags in India is the amount of capital people are willing to invest, maybe in equities or also through debt. When we get foreign capital, definitely the economy becomes much more stronger. People tend to spend more. The income ratios of emerging market goes up, and we believe that over the next couple of years this story will unfold, because while there are specific opportunities in US, uh, we just saw in the technology space, but as an economy, there could be better opportunities in emerging markets which can grow much faster than developed economies over the next 5 to 10 years. And you know one of the major reason which I mentioned is the flow of capital from negative yielding debt to risky assets like in emerging markets. The other, if you see, most emerging markets have very favorable demographic. Most emerging markets, be it China, be it India, or maybe Russia, or some of the Asian countries like Taiwan or Brazil, in the Latin America space, they all have very young population, and which is very important for a high growth economy. Within emerging market also, if you see, uh, if you can move to next slide. Yeah, thanks. Uh, like in developed economies or developed countries like US and Europe, there are pockets or there are sectors or companies which are actually leaders in their own space, and they are actually spread across various emerging markets. Like we all might have heard about Alibaba, which is a Chinese company, Tencent Holding, which is again a Chinese company. These are one of the largest, you can say, e-commerce companies or internet related services companies which are in China, and they have been creating huge amount of wealth for investors. Our own, HDFC is one of the leaders when it comes to financial companies in the emerging space. Similarly, Ping An Bank is one of the largest or fastest growing Chinese bank. In IT space, emerging markets are doing very well. Taiwan, for that matter, has one of the largest TSCM, which is Taiwanese Semiconductor Company, which is actually supplying semiconductor to all developed countries. And today we all know the semiconductor is being used in every technology or the Internet of Things. Uh, and similarly, in various sectors like consumption and energy, each emerging market has his own unique story or strength, uh, which can be captured through, by investing into a emerging market fund or emerging market play. Uh, and as I mentioned, over the next 5 to 10 years, uh, because the developed markets have already done well, this is one place where people can diversify. uh, and one of the most important aspect of emerging market is, within emerging market each country is very different. Unlike in developed markets, which generally have very similar demographics or sectoral bias, uh, within emerging, like if you see Russia, the Russian market is heavily based on the energy sector. If you look at the Chinese market, which is heavily skewed towards the tech and the consumption story. If you look at India, India is more of a financial driven market. If you go to Taiwan or maybe Brazil, Brazil is more a commodity driven market. Taiwan is again emerging technology market. So each market gives a very different flavor within emerging market, and is a good way to diversify. And this the fiscal stimulus which we have seen, because post pandemic, most of the developed countries have done their bit, and hence we are seeing the flows of capital, uh, mostly in post global financial crisis. Also we have seen the second leg of fiscal stimulus generally happens by the emerging market economies, when the dollar starts depreciate uh, you know the strengthening of the dollar stops, it pauses and it starts depreciating. That is where a lot of emerging markets start to do some reforms. Like in India, if you see, the first leg of reforms were very slow and gradual, but over the next 2 to 3 years, like in after global financial crisis, we may see a faster pace of stimulus or reforms. So that also could be a trigger for emerging markets to do well. So just to summarize, emerging market is a beautiful way to diversify if you believe in story of India, because India is a young country. It's a small, you can say, economy today compared to the population. The same story goes true when it comes to China or Russia or Brazil, or some of the other emerging markets.
Thank
Radhika,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
you want to add something? Please go on. Go
No,
on.
no, I actually just wanted to summarize. I think Ranjan has actually captured the opportunity in both technology and emerging markets. And I think, from our end, maybe we can stop here and hand it over to you,
Sure,
Tarun.
sure. Great. So, thank you, Niranjan. Thank you, Radhika, for this brief presentation. Now, we will open this floor for question and answer. So, maybe each one of you, if you have any specific question on global investing, maybe you can type it on the Q&A section. Maybe, Radhika, I will quickly start with some question which comes to my mind.
Okay.
India is a $3 trillion, and again, there is no correlation between that. India is a $3 trillion economy. Amazon is a 1.56 trillion as we talk. Market cap company, $2 trillion Apple market cap is there. Amazon is at a 90 P stock, और सबको यही डर लगता है कि are we in a 2000 kind of situation? Are we investing into a frothy market? Are we doing something which we don't know just because it is glamorous? It is looking like a Apple, Amazon. So it is a fear. It is a fear deep. As an advisor, also I feel, are we investing into very, very rich valuation stocks? So what's your take on that? How do we de-risk that portion? Are we in a 2000 kind of situation?
Okay, so if the question is on technology, I would say a couple of things. Yes, technology. So there are two parts to it. One is that if you look at technology, yes, technology companies are expensive today, but technology has driven a bulk of the earnings for the S&P over the last decade. So it is not just price growth. Unfortunately or fortunately, earnings growth has come from technology. Now, the problem with technology, however, is that people assume that technology is for companies. I mean, it is the FANG or FANGM or whatever you want to call it. And I think at least when we think about in our funds investing in technology, we try to have a more diversified approach. The problem with technology is a single company can run up very fast and it can also have, kind of sharp collapses. So at least when we run a technology fund, we try to be a lot more diversified in the kind of holdings that we have. I would also say that technology is a thematic fund. So whenever you're looking at themes, they have to form a part of your asset allocation, but it can't be 20% of your asset allocation or 30% of your asset allocation. It is a satellite part of your asset allocation. So that's also something like emerging markets is a much broader theme. Technology is a sectoral theme. So I don't want to take away from the fact that it is also a theme which has underlying risk. It's a theme with legs and it's a theme with potential, but it's a theme with risk.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
just
think
to add to that, Tarun, you talked about Amazon. If you go back to history and maybe in 2015-16, Amazon had a PE of almost 120, and the stock price was around 600. Today, as we speak, the stock price is close to 2,600, if I'm not wrong, and the PE is at 90. So if you see throughout last 5 years, the PE has been in the range of 100, but the stock price have multiplied by almost 5 to 6 times. So as Radhika mentioned, for most of these companies, and for that matter, any growth company, and in Indian context also, while I'll not name any stock, but few stocks have always been rich. But they are rich in valuation because there is growth underneath it. And this kind of theme will remain overvalued or richly valued, I would say, not overvalued. And for many of these companies, that has been the norm for not only last 1 or 2 years, in fact for last several years. because what they are pricing is in the stock price is the future growth.
Sure, sure, sure. Great. Radhika, another question. You run a dedicated theme on China, and again, I know I'm talking little controversial stuff. There is a lot of talks of U.S.-China trade wars. Lot of stuff. Data of China is not authentic. So, what makes you so excited about China, or why a China staple fund in your portfolio? Why did you selected that?
Okay, so firstly, I should say that I think one should separate patriotism and investments. I am a very patriotic person. I'm the daughter of a diplomat who incidentally researches and writes on China, and my father doesn't write very flattering articles on China's political regime, but that is a separate matter. But I think money management and should be separate from patriotism. And yes, our China fund has been popular. I think if you look at China, I think there are two cases on China, and Niranjan, you can add. One is that China is like India, a very, very strong economy. You can't take away from that. I think he gave examples of Indian companies also. China historically is also a market that is still not even reached its 2008 highs. And historically, what you used to see in China is that economy used to grow, infra used to grow, etc., but stock markets were not moving. With the opening, because the Chinese stock market largely comprised of PSU type companies, so it was like investing in a Nifty that was largely PSU. You were feeling great about the infra, which we don't feel great about, but you were not getting stock price returns. Now with A shares, if you look at the composition of Chinese indices or the China products that we are looking at, they are largely investing in similar themes to India: financials, consumption, technology, etc. I think China is also attracting a lot of interest today because it is, good or bad, the first market that is recovering after COVID, and sharply recovering after COVID. It is the first economy that is really recovering after COVID. And yes, while people will talk in boardrooms about reducing dependence on China, etc., etc., I think its strength as an economy that you can't take away from. Niranjan, you want to add something? I know this is your favorite fund also.
Yeah, Radhika. So you summed it well, actually. China, and the most important point why the China market is doing well is the economy, and at least for the investor, it has been opened. Uh, just to give you some technical details, the China market has two markets. One is the Hong Kong market, and the other one is the China A-shares market. The A-shares market was kind of very closed for foreign investors till recently. Over the last 1 or 2 years, the Chinese government has taken a lot of efforts to improve their, you can say, the disclosure standards, their governance of the way the stock exchanges and the equity market works. And that is evident from the increase in the Chinese A-share weights in the emerging market indices of MSCI. And in the emerging market indices itself, now China holds almost 30 to 40% weight. And this is going to go up because the A-shares market is very, very large in terms of market size. And because of this, there is huge amount of capital flow which will continue over the next 2 to 3 years, because this increase will take at least next 1 to 2 years or 3 years, in fact, to gradually go up. And because of this, a lot of interesting companies are coming under the radar of investors, and which will, attract flows. The second important thing is the way Chinese economy was perceived a few years back was it was only export driven. While if you look at the demographics, if you look at the natural resources, uh, China is very much like India. And when we talk about India story, it is all about consumption. It is all about the lower penetration of various luxury goods and all. And the same story holds true for China as well. Even in China, the penetration of maybe financial services or healthcare for that matter, the way technology companies are penetrating into the businesses or they are aiding businesses, uh, this structural growth story till 2, 3 years back, no one knew and no one believed. I think so. With opening up of this market, people are believing it. They are looking at it, and that is the opportunity which we believe over the next 3 to 5 years could unfold. And it's a very structural call and not a tactical call. So while the valuations of the Chinese market is not as high as maybe other emerging markets or like in India, but you know it's a very structural story. The valuations are very reasonable, and I mean, for an investor, uh, and as Radhika mentioned, you should definitely keep aside investing and patriotism. I think so. It could be definitely a wise way to diversify outside in India. And the correlation also, if you look at the last 10, 15 years of correlation of India and Chinese market, is not very high, despite being an emerging market.
Thank you, Niranjan. There is one very interesting question, Radhika, and this is related to NRI investor. And
Yeah.
I wanted to ask this question from a financial planning point of view. A lot of us are thinking about our kids going abroad, studying. They will require a lot of dollars at that point of time. So Mr. Punjabi has asked a question that I have heard that investing in international funds comes handy when we have our child wanting to study in US. How
Yeah.
will this work if we are investing through a NRO account, which is non-repatriable? I know it's a little technical question, but you want to look at that?
The benefit, the reason people say this is, look, if I wanted to study abroad, like when I went to Wharton, an undergrad education cost, I think, $40,000. And the currency was probably, I mean, God, I don't remember what the currency was at 2005, but it was definitely not 73. It was probably 50, 60, or in that range. Now, if you want to educate a child abroad, and this is 15 years later, the cost is $60,000 at a currency of 70. So if you were saving money, if my parents were saving money in India for this education, they are obviously hit by the currency depreciation. Now, here, if you are investing in international funds and you're investing in a US fund, obviously you will benefit from the depreciation. So if the dollar depreciates, the dollar appreciates by 4% a year, you will get those returns. So it's just hedging your portfolio and your life against one layer of currency depreciation. Now, if it's NRO, you can't use that money abroad. Obviously, if it's NRE, you can use that money abroad. But essentially, even if you've kept the money in India, you've protected yourself. And I don't know if I'm being very clear about this, against I mean, you've earned the lost returns you would have had in currency otherwise.
Sure. Great. Radhika, I think there is a question about how can we see the actual company in which this Greater China Offshore Fund is invested. I know on your website it is available, but some companies you want to talk about, which companies this fund is invested in?
Then, Anjan, I'll give this to you. Where to find it on website and just a few companies. You're on mute.
I have the link. I can share that link with him. I'm aware. I will share that link. But Niranjan, maybe you want to share some sectors and companies where this China fund is invested?
Sure, sure.
Got
If
it.
you can just give me access, maybe I'll present one or two slides as well
I'll just
on
stop
the
the
China fund.
Yeah, might just be easier that way. I can just make you go to the
Okay, Tarun, can you just make me?
I did it.
Oh, okay, thanks.
It'll be easiest this way.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you go.
Just a minute.
No, I was there.
Yeah,
It's there.
yeah. Sure. So China, if you see broadly, the fund is, playing four structural themes which is unfolding in the Chinese market. Sorry. Yeah. One is the technology and innovation. As I mentioned, like in India or any other country, or growing economies, technology-driven innovation or adopting the digital or cloud computing is very very fast. So two themes which within the technology the fund is playing is, one is technology and innovation. The first company is Alibaba. We all know how Alibaba is changing the e-commerce. It has already changed. In fact, it is one of the largest you can say retail chains across China. Uh, just to give you some numbers, uh, what Amazon or maybe all companies put together does in maybe last 5 big billion sales or so. Alibaba does that much amount of sale on a one single given day. So that is one of the top holdings. Tencent Holdings, again, runs across China with having various internet-related products, entertainment, and artificial intelligence presence, which is part of the portfolio. The other segment is also the healthcare, because like India, the healthcare is also very underpenetrated segment as far as China is concerned. China spends almost maybe 5 to 6% of their healthcare of their GDP on healthcare, whereas a country like US spends almost 16 to 17%. Uh, so this is a segment where uh, companies like Wuxi Biologics, which is into oncologic or doing cramps or overseas kind of research for large companies in maybe European countries. Uh, specialty chains or diagnostic chains like Air Eye Hospital is basically one of the world's largest eye hospital chains. So these kind of healthcare segments or healthcare companies are looking at higher penetration or looking through the higher penetration in China over the next few years, which is one of the important themes which the fund is playing. The other important aspect is the consumption. As we mentioned, like India, China is also a country where it is seeing a drastic rise in the middle class population. Uh, the demographics are very favorable. They are very young, and hence the play of premiumization in each of the consumption segment is also one of the play. So there are companies which into sausages and condominiums, which are part of the portfolio. And on the other side, cyber security, digital adoption is also one of the technology themes which the fund is playing. So if you look at the portfolios, the top 10 holdings you will see are some of from these sectors like Alibaba, uh, TSMC. And just to mention, this is not only a China fund; it's basically a Greater China fund, which looks at three regions. One is China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. Of course, currently it is overweight on the China Asia's market because of the opportunity which is available there. But you'll also find companies which are there from Taiwan. So like Taiwan Semiconductor is, which we just spoke in our emerging market presentation, is also a part of this. Tencent, one of the largest company, Ping An Insurance. So these are the themes which the fund is running. If you look at the exposure, almost 28 to 30% exposure is into IT or technology. Uh, Consumer discretionary is almost 20%. Financials is just 14%. And now look at a fund maybe in India, the order would be actually reversed. In most of our funds, you'll find 30-40% financials. You'll have maybe technology which has just increased from 8-9% to 12-13%. Consumer discretionary, while we talk a lot about consumer discretionary in India, but if you look at the exposure in many of our diversified fund, it is very minimal. If you take autos as a segment or maybe uh, FMCG, the overall exposure may not be more than 13-14%. So these kind of exposure actually complements exposure which we already have in our home country, which is maybe financial biased or some other sector biased.
So, Radhika, one quick question. What is the percentage of the overall portfolio? Maybe I know every investor has a risk profile, and basis that he need to invest. But what is your suggestion, and how do you look at how much percentage of your portfolio should be part of the international portfolio? That is one. And secondly, currency fluctuation is a concern. Does investment fund house try to reduce it, the adverse impact? This is a question from Mr. Mahajan. And something about the expense ratio, high expense ratio.
I
So
saw
this
that.
is, yeah.
No, we don't try and address currency. It's we can't take a call on currency. We are not experts at it, so we don't try and do that. I'll come to expense ratio. What was the first question? The percentage of allocation. Percentage
Yes.
of allocation. So obviously, this is not a category you should do if you're not doing your basic debt and equity allocation, right? I think this is a question you would best answer, Tarun, but it has to be
Yes.
meaningful. I mean, it's got to build up from 10 to 20, 25%, in my view. That's what it is in my allocations. And then you really have to seek your comfort level. Expense ratio, there is a myth in this country that these funds are expensive. These funds under regulation are capped at 2.25%, which includes the fee that in our case a JP Morgan charges, plus the fee that we charge. The problem is there is tremendous amount of inconsistency in how people report this. Some people show only the Edelweiss fee, some people show the JP Morgan fee. Then what people do is they look at the fee that they think we charge and they check the fee from some JP Morgan website of what they charge. I would just recommend you look at our fact sheet. The fee is regulatorily capped at 2.25% in the regular plan. And obviously, in fact, if you look at, I'll give you an example. These funds are actually cheaper to Indian investors than they are to global investors. Our US tech fund, if a retail investor bought it overseas, I think with the entry loads and everything, it's about a 4-5% fee product. In India, it's a 2.25% fee product. So that's very, very important to know. And I can't tell you how many times Niranjan and I answer this question on expense.
Sure. Great. I think there are some questions related to the central banks are pumping huge amount of money, almost $5 to $7 trillion have been pumped in currently. And I think we are expecting more to come in. So Radhika, what do you see coming 2-3 years, equity as a part of the portfolio? Yes, asset allocation is correct, but you feel overweight, underweight, or medium weight. How do you see equity? Maybe in a 3-year point of view.
We just released a report, as we were telling you, that it is risky to be underweight equities right now. You can make the argument that valuations are expensive, but you're also at the potential beginning of an earnings uptick. The other thing I don't buy is that you have to remember you're sitting in a zero interest rate environment, and interest rates act as a correcting force for any asset prices. So these are just a few things. I mean, no one can predict the future. But as I said, those are my initial thoughts. I'm just trying to summarize them quickly in the interest of time.
Great. So I think we are done. Most of the things are done. So with that note, thank you very much, Radhika. Thank you, Niranjan,
Thank
for
you.
sharing your insights. Niranjan, can you make me the host? There is a quick poll which we want to run. Yeah. Anything else, Radhika, you want to quickly sum up with? Anything you want to sum up?
Thanks everyone for joining in. I think what Niranjan and I wanted to share were two specific opportunities and just reiterating the fact that this is an important part of your asset allocation for the diversification benefit, for the currency benefit, and for the opportunity to access themes that you wouldn't otherwise. And you know what, guys, it's easy to do. So I think with the help of an advisor, please do explore the opportunity. With that, thanks a lot.
So I have just launched the poll. Maybe everyone can just quickly answer these polls. Yes. Thank you so much, Radhika. Thank you, Niranjan.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.